Okay.
All right, I think we'll get started here. As you sign in, please find a seat. And we'll get started for a brief presentation before we look for your feedback on a few things. We'll do an introductions. We're going to get started here in a minute. Okay. Welcome to our second public meeting for the Rouses Point Comprehensive Plan update. My name is Bob Murphy. I'm a consultant with Barton and LaJudas. With me tonight is my colleague, Matt Miller. We have been retained by the village to help guide the community through this process. As I mentioned, this is our second public meeting. There will be a third followed by public hearings. So far from the last time, you'll hear from us, and hopefully not the last time we hear from you, because tonight is all about what you think. I say this to every community that we work in. I'm from the capital region. I'm never going to know Rouses Point the way you do. And what tonight's about is getting that feedback from you so we can put that into the plan. It's not about me telling you what we think Rouses Point should be. It's about you. So I look forward to hearing what you have to say later when we break up and move around the back of the room to go over our vision and goals. So next slide, man. I also would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge our online audience. We are recording tonight's meeting, but there is also an online participation availability tonight. So if you know folks who couldn't make it tonight, there will be a recording and an online mechanism to give us the same feedback that you all will do so later. We'll have that open for a few weeks after tonight. So we want to hear from as many people as we can. So please spread the word if you talk to folks, throughout the week, that we want to hear from them. All right, so tonight we'll just go through a little background of where we've been in the process and where we want to go. Again, this is our second meeting, public meeting. It is to focus on the draft vision and goals that the steering committee and the consultants have put together based on your feedback so far. We'll have that breakout activity for the folks in the room. That'll be moving around the boards in the back. For those online, that'll be going to the link that we'll provide for you. Then we'll go over next steps. So a little bit about introductions and background. Go ahead. As I mentioned, I'm Bob Murphy with B&L. Also been working with Morgan Washburn. You may have seen her at the first public meeting, as well as Dan Theobald on this project. But we're really led by our steering committee, which you see the members on the left side of your screen: Chris Latchmore, Tammy Sagan, Matt Favreau, John Mott, Lisa Turner, Brent Favreau, and Pat Hanning. So they've been really being our eyes and ears as we work through this. As I mentioned, I'm not from Rouses Point. I don't live here. We need the public input and the committee input to help steer us in the right direction of where the community wants to go. This project is funded partially by the Department of State Smart Growth Comprehensive Planning Program. Our contact there and lead representative is Lisa Melville. And I also like to mention our team member from Forward Planning. They're an entity that specializes in economic analysis, and they've done a local market assessment for Rouses Point as part of this project. I'd also, while we're here, like to mention that we understand that the town of Champlain and village of Champlain are undergoing the same process, almost in step with us. And so we've shared resources throughout the process. Likewise, they've shared with us. I think the intent is to have a joint committee meeting at least in the springtime while we start to get recommended actions together so we can find win-win scenarios so that neither of us are planning in a bubble. So I just wanted to, I'm sure you guys have seen that in the papers around here too. So wanted to acknowledge that we are working hand in hand in the two different projects. So here's the project schedule. As I mentioned, this is our visioning workshop. This is our second workshop. After tonight, we'll be able to refine our vision and goals and move into recommended actions that help fulfill those goals. And then bring those to you at our next public workshop, which will be an open house, hopefully sometime later in the spring, where you can tell us what we did right, good, bad, or indifferent, and then look to refine those before we have a full draft plan, which will then take through seeker process, Clinton County referral, and then finally for village board consideration and public hearing. So that's the general process here. We'll see how it plays out. That's the target. All right, so what goes into a comprehensive plan? Just a little background for those of you who may have missed the first meeting. How we structure our comprehensive plans is essentially a 6 phases. So if you think about what makes up a comprehensive plan, well, one is kind of an introduction where you talk about our methodology. We'll talk about the different ways we've reached out to get public feedback, as well as the previous documents that have supported our efforts. We'll have a community profile, which essentially tells the reader where are we at today. It answers that question, the current conditions of the village. As I mentioned, that's informed by existing plans and studies. What tonight's all about is that vision. It's where do we want to be in 20 years? Where do we want to go? That's the section that answers that question. Then we have policy framework and community development strategy. That's the how do we get there. So we have the where are we at today, where do we want to go, and how do we get there. Those are essentially the components of a comprehensive plan and where we want to get in the overall project. So just starting off with the community profile. Go ahead, Matt. We'll move through these slides pretty quickly. Just some background knowledge of the type of things that are included in a community profile. Obviously, location, very important to, I think, the context of Rouse's point. What I've been struck by in my working with the village over the last year or so is the unique setting that Rouse's Point is. So close to the Canadian border, obviously, within the Montreal metropolitan area, but in the United States, in Clinton County, you have this proximity to bilingual cultures and the scenery of Lake Champlain. I'm looking across to both sides of it and the Champlain Valley itself. And it's really struck me as an opportunity. I know this is not a new thing for folks who live here, but it is a unique thing for me looking at it from the outside. And some of the boards in the back of the room later, I want to get your thoughts on that. And if you think that setting is played up enough, is it too much? I want to hear what you have to think. So go ahead, Matt. That's just an example. Also, population, not much change in the village between the 2010 census and the 2020 census, but it sort of mirrored changes in the county as well, with a slight drop at the county level. Employment, these are things that we look at. Again, it's a modest drop of about 10%. In the 12 years between 2010 data and 2022 data that we collected this for. Also commuting patterns, not a shock to people. 93% of folks commute by car. Obviously impacted by the closure of the Pfizer plant in the years before that. So go ahead, Matt. There's just we look at employment, business statistics, housing. One thing that's striking here is that there's a lot fewer owner-occupied housing in the town than the county overall. That's not surprising. Villages and cities often have a lot more renter occupied than the county overall. There's a lot more subdivisions in towns where there's more space, just by comparison. So that's not a surprising thing to see. One other thing to note is the age of the median year of the structures built in the town, or the village rather. It is on the older end, of course, as most villages are. They were developed longer ago than the town. So you see that in the housing structures. They're a bit older, both in style and in design. So something that we note in the future. Vacant properties, a little less vacancy in the village than in the county in 2020. Again, something to note that there's more vacancy in the rest of the county than in the village on average. We also have a map gallery where we describe, in this case, this is land use, the breakdown, and this is all according to, excuse me, the county property assessor, how they classify properties at the time. So you may look at a property and be like, oh, that's not vacant. Well, it was when the property assessor went through and did it. Or something might be different. And we've actually noted a couple things during the committee meetings of things that have changed. So we've updated the map as we've gone. But you can see that a lot of the village is a residential land use. That's this yellow color. To the north, up on the border at the northern end of the village, there's a large vacant land property up there that's been the subject of some development talk over the last 20 years or so. But so this is a good way to see some opportunities on the map. Question?
280 acres of residential land. Where do you get that?
That's the total acreage of all these yellow parcels.
It's full what?
Acreage of all these yellow parcels, according to the property assessor.
Empty?
No,
Yeah.
no, not empty. No, no,
Oh, okay.
just total.
I see, I looked at it, I thought you meant it was empty.
No,
Okay.
no. So we have all these maps. I'm not going to go through all of them, but I'll go through a couple of them. We can move through, Matt. So this is vacant parcels. So these are your vacant parcels. Dark shaded in dark.
But you know that, they know that's a bog, that's a.
Right, it's all wetland. We'll get there. We'll get there.
That's the
Okay.
next
So,
map,
yep,
actually. Yeah.
Yep, go to the next map. So here we have privately owned versus publicly owned land. So you see there's actually not a lot of publicly owned land in the village. That's good for your tax base. But has some limitations in what the village can directly do. If you go to the next map, here's our wetlands. So this is actually the old wetland data. There's actually new wetland data now, but it's all bog up there, as you said. So it's all freshwater wetland. So that just shows some different constraints on development that's going to be in our community profile. We've also done a market and real estate analysis, which pointed to some of the market needs based on travel areas within 30 minutes, within an hour, within a couple hours, and just to see where spending is occurring elsewhere in that I guess commuter shed versus what is actually happening in the village. So if you move forward ahead, Matt, so here's that kind of breakdown that we looked at almost all the way to Montreal. One more, Matt. And some of the key market opportunities for waterfront tourism. The tourism demands suggest that there could be could support guest rooms and some sort of lodging. And you've seen that through Airbnb as well as the hotel in town, and the possibility for attracting investment at the former Pfizer site. And there's more detail than that, but I wanted to just give you a primer. Then I wanted to go through a little synopsis of our public engagement so far. Last spring, you may recall, we issued a community survey of 25 questions. We got 47 responses. The first go around, we had over 200. So, but we wanted to see if things had changed. We asked a lot of the same questions that we did during the grant writing period in 2021. And things didn't change a whole lot in the answers that we got back. Can you move ahead, man? So just so for your information, in the 24 survey from last year, 72% responses had been residents for over 10 years. 80% of the responses own their residence in the village. These are fairly similar to the 2021 totals. 40% of the respondents are retired, which was more than the 31% in 2021. But some of the top responses that I wanted to draw our attention to just briefly is things that have the greatest impact on why folks choose to be in the Rouses Point area. Number one is affordability of housing. Number two is to be close to friends and family. And number three is proximity to the lake. All pretty high hit rates in those responses. The response that was chosen least of our options was access to educational resources. And then many of these responses were very similar to what we got in 2020. So some community concerns. So on the backside of things, Number one was vacant storefronts. Number two, and a wide gap between number one and number two, I will say, from 81% to 45%, was illegal drug use and crime, followed by truck traffic through the village. That was in 2021. 2024, we still see vacant storefronts being a concern. Truck traffic, now number two, and poor housing and property conditions, number three. So that was a change from the 2021 and 2024 surveys. Some opportunities that were identified include, promoting successful Lake Street businesses, tourism, independent locally owned businesses, restoring Lake Street buildings, overnight visitor accommodations, better lake access, maybe a small beach, and maintaining a natural shoreline as some of the opportunities identified. And some of the key issues that they hope that this plan and forthcoming policy changes may address include noise, the lack of economic growth, lack of public beach access, lodging, lake access, lack of waterfront recreation, and truck traffic. So we see a lot of similar themes moving through the two surveys. As I mentioned, we had our first public information meeting on May 8th last year, shortly after that survey. About 20 attendees that night. Those of you who were here, you might remember we broke up into two groups, focusing on strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. I think I took the two negative sides of that, which was weaknesses and threats, and my colleague Morgan took the strengths and opportunities. Important to and keep in mind all of them, because it's not all sunshine and roses, but it's not all bad either. So some of the strengths that came out of this discussion were location, affordability, walkability, Lake Champlain. Weaknesses included lodging, use of the recreational center, lack thereof, I should say, lack of winter sports, public transportation. Some opportunities included a new motel possibility, signage, work from home trends, the short-term rental phenomenon like Airbnb, and marketing opportunities for the village. And then some threats to the future of the village included fixed incomes for seniors, short-term rentals. So you see short-term rentals as both an opportunity and a threat. I think that accurately paints that picture. Out-of-date zoning, and expendable income residents. So residents with expendable income leaving. So those are some of the topics that were discussed at our first public meeting. That was really to get an understanding of what the issues were, what people like about the village, what they want to see preserved, enhanced, and what they want to see changed. And so we've taken that to help formulate some of these visions and goals behind it. And that's what I'll run through here briefly. So I know I don't have a slide on it here, but I'm going to talk with my hands here. So to visually explain the framework of a comprehensive plan, you start with a vision statement. Anyone maybe who you might have seen this in the businesses that you work for, any teams that you've been on, there's a mission, there's a vision at the top that this is where we want to get to. And that sets the stage for goals that support that vision. So what we've got here is our draft vision statement. It's supported by 6 goal categories that if we achieve each of the goals, we'll achieve the vision. From the vision, from the goals on down, their implementation actions. So what actions will it take to fulfill each goal? And so then you have this hierarchy going from tangible, things that you can pick up, policies that you can actually change, actions, up to goals that they help fulfill, up to the vision that will allow your community to be what you want it to be in 20 years. So that's a little synopsis of how we get from a vision down to recommended actions. Today's discussion is focused on the vision and the goals. So, if I could, I want to read through our vision statement, put it in your mind as this is where the steering committee thinks we should be for our vision in 20 years, Rouse's Point in 20 years. I want to hear from you tonight if you think that that's right, if you think that should be changed. if you think something else should be emphasized. But this is where we're at right now with our draft. Rouses Point is a port of opportunity for residents and visitors of all ages. The village is an affordable and appealing place to grow up, raise a family, spend retirement, and everything in between. Regional and cross-border transportation and communications bring the Champlain Valley and Greater Montreal well within reach. Made all the more intriguing given the inviting and open-minded nature of the Rouses Point community. Dining, entertainment, services, and lodging on the scenic Lake Street corridor draw residents regionally, but also serves residents within walking distance, while small businesses have room to grow in a variety of settings in the village. Rouses Point is known regionally as a destination for the Empire State Trail, lakeside events year-round, where locals and visitors share in the Adirondack Coast experience. So big, broad vision, but that's what it should be. It should be supported by a little bit more detail in the goals. But this is what sets the stage for those goals. So we'll get more into that later tonight. So I will spare everybody by not reading through each of these goals because they're kind of lengthy. So we'll move through these kind of quick, Matt. But the first goal that we describe is recreation. We talked about that in some of the feedback we received so far, the importance of addressing lakefront recreation, on lake recreation, and also year-round recreation. Economic development, obviously a big topic, especially with, sort of an identity of the village with Pfizer no longer being around. What is the next step for economic development? I know the village has been working on this for a while, as well as the Clinton County region as well. So this touches upon that goal. Housing and neighborhoods. We noted a lot of folks now, they drive from Rouses Point, live in the community to other employment centers. But how do we make Rouses Point an even higher on the list of places where people want to live? How do we address some of the older housing that we discovered in the community profile? What programs might there be to help support code enforcement and just private property investment? Community image building. This was I think an interesting discussion that came about after our first meeting. Kind of a pep talk for the village, if I do say so. I come from an old industrial city down in the capital region, Mechanicville. Maybe some of you may know where that is. But we have a confidence crisis where I live. It uses a factory town. And I think that people, kind of take liberties with taking shots at their own town that they live in. And I think that's a shame. There are great things about it, just like there's even greater things about Rouses Point, if I'm being frank, with the lake access, the beautiful scenery around here, proximity to Montreal, so many things that like my place doesn't have. But I still think there's beauty in where I live. And I think that's what an image building campaign can do for Rouses Point, but it needs to be driven by what you all think. It can't be the consultant coming in telling you what we think is so great about it. You guys live here. There's probably things that you really appreciate about the village that, maybe they don't come up all the time. Maybe it's just, you like the sidewalk setting on your street. You like how the trees overhang the street. You like that there's that little view of the lake between two buildings on Lake Street. Those are things that add up to, I think, what a lot of people miss, especially in big cities. They don't have these sort of special qualities of their village. And I think a community image building campaign can help draw that in. Tourism. This has been a double-edged sword in our discussion so far. Obviously, it brings in investment. It brings in people who might go to restaurants and subscribe to services like, whether it's a tax service or getting your hair cut, or a diner. So they bring in potential investment that way, and your marinas as well. But they also can overrun, some of the needs of the local people. And that's where it needs to be balanced. And I want to hear from you tonight how that can best be balanced in your minds. History and culture, kind of along the same lines as that community image. you know, there are things about Rouse's Point that are so unique to its history that could be drawn out and highlighted and help give that pep talk to people as they learn about the village. So, that's is emphasized in this goal. And what we hope to draw from you tonight is ideas about how to do that best. You know, again, you know the community better than we do, just reading about it in our analyses. What is an opportunity that people will subscribe to? Is it walking tours, like audio walking tours? Is it historic signage? Is it an historical commemorative event that we could maybe draw attention to the village's history on? Those are things that I want to hear from you tonight. So those are the 6 goal categories. So recreation, economic development, housing and neighborhoods, community image building, tourism, and history and culture. We've got some pointed questions about each topic in the back of the room, as well as a draft vision statement. After we break up here, I want to get you back there moving around the room and talking to you about those topics. Before I do so, and before I set you guys loose on grabbing some food in the back there, I'd like to answer any questions in the room about the process or tonight. Question?
Will you be sharing these slides?
Yes,
Will they be posted on the village website?
yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, the question for those online is, will the slides be posted on the village website? And the answer is yes, they will be, along with this recording of tonight's meeting. Any other questions? Yes.
The biggest thing needed in village is big employment, you need industry to come in here. And Plattsburgh seems to get everything that, of course, Gary Douglas is right up there.
Yep.
On it, so and I said, how come we don't get any of even the gerbils that they want?
So how can we get more help from the county to attract more business?
Yeah. You know, and like they always say in Albany, we don't exist because that you get past Albany, we're not visible.
So how do we
Yeah.
how do we get our hand in the air more for that?
You get lost there.
Yeah. How do we raise the profile of the village when it comes to those things?
And I have something that I feel that, because I'm 91, okay? And being an older senior, I think that if you're a widow or widower, you're up in age and you're on Social Security and your income is on the poverty level and you've been in the house X number of years, we shouldn't have to be paying property taxes. Something should be done for the elderly, simply that, because the electric light bill we get, $56. You got PPA and the clean energy,
Mhm.
$145. There goes my social security increase of $50 a month.
So
I can't afford it.
So how do we help folks on a fixed income with expenses? Because we say in the vision statement that we want to be a community for all ages. So that could be part of it. So yeah, we'll have to get that information in the back.
The upper people will get to reach the point where you're on that level. You
Right.
can't get help because you're $40 over the poverty line, so
We got to be mindful of
you
that.
don't get
Yeah.
any help. See, I'm bare bones everything. I have no television, cable. I have TV. My telephone's free because my husband was a company.
Mhm.
And the extra insurance I bet went from $50 to $150.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't, it's
Costs keep going up and the income's still the same. Yeah.
Your social security
Yeah.
can't increase to keep up with these stupid things that they invent, you know.
Absolutely. Yeah. Point taken. Like, how do we keep costs? It was mentioned in the surveys that affordability was one of the top reasons folks live here. How do we keep that the way it is? So that's a good point. Any other questions? Yes.
Yeah, reference, how would you like to be in 20, where would you like to be in 20 years?
Yes.
I would like to see, does that mean the mechanisms that we shoot for changes like by 20 years? I'd like to see some changes in the next year or two. So for one in particular, But in 2 years, we had our meeting last evening. Now we're talking about with your chart, now we're looking at implementing maybe, or the next thing is October, but we missed another summer. And I think it's all well and good, how we want it. I've been on 20 years ago, we had basically the same seminar, what we want to call it, vision. Some things happen, but thinking, I think there's got to be a little bit more expediency.
Okay.
As far as this is what we think, there are things that can be done. We don't have to wait.
Agreed.
We don't have to wait 3-4 months or 8 months.
Absolutely.
Right.
So, that's a good point. And, as I kind of talked about, from the broader sense, the vision and goals are supported by implementation actions, and they all feed each other. But those actions are also prioritized in short, medium, long term. And some of those short term actions could be done even before you finish the plan. That's for sure. So, especially if there's a draft together by the summertime, that's when a lot of the grant programs are available, if funding is needed for them. Some actions funding might not be needed for, it might be a policy change. And that stuff can occur, after this engagement occurs. So, I think.
The process is stretched out a little too much. This is like a refresher, remind us what we did. We threw a lot of ideas out like last April.
Yeah.
We did. I didn't see a whole lot of thing up there, but I think we're starting scratching.
All right. Any other? Yes.
I'd just like to mention that there's various institutions within the village that do contribute to community life quite a bit.
Yeah.
We're sitting in one. right?
Yeah.
This building, which is built by volunteers, et cetera. And that's a big asset for our community. Another private entity, which I think has an influence on the village, is 260 Lake Street, which has not been there for 4 years, been there for a certain amount of time. But it's a huge contribution to this village in terms of attracting people, so maybe build on some of that.
Mhm.
And of course, my own pet favorite building in the village is the library.
Mhm.
And, we're trying to expand that library. We're thinking, can we do that? Can it be more of a community center and somewhere that can build? And I'd like to see your vision include the fact that there are institutions and organizations which in the village are there already and could be encouraged and integrated into the life.
Absolutely. Yeah. When you get back around the room, put that on the board there. We'll get that included. That's a good suggestion. That's what we want to hear tonight is how can we amend these to match what you all think as a community? Any other questions before we get into the breakout group or before I see if there's any online questions? Oh, yes.
I guess I'm from Hell's Common.
Sure.
Yes. And I can't help but. Yeah, it's really a comment to the question of how can we try to attract economic development? That's been going on now for a few years. Township has implemented a website, a marketing initiative just for that. It's not just for the town, others points involved in that. Maybe a lot of people aren't aware of it. You visit townchamplain.com, you're gonna see a strong marketing initiative that's going on to try to build this, and it's starting to catch on. That's the only way we can do it. We're letting people know that the spring is here, town is here, the village is here, and we all share that same proximity.
Absolutely. I've seen that promotional video. It's pretty sharp.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I mean, like I said, I'm not on a soapbox. You just felt what you said. I don't know if everyone in this room is aware of that. A lot of people don't. Use the website.
Yep. No, much appreciated. So, Jen, do we have anyone on the call who has made a comment or a question?
There's just one question asking if the slides will be downloadable.
Yes.
But the meeting is being recorded.
Yep. Both the answer to those questions is yes. The meeting will be recorded and the slides will be downloadable. Okay. Well, okay, one other question. Yes.
Yeah, Actually, I'm familiar with B and L and, I know you're, very highly respected, consulting company and is very happy with the information that you provided me when I was in government. But I've been through many of these planning presentations going back many, many years, and they're always the same. I don't think that any small effort is going to make a difference. Make a huge effort to make a change in this village. I don't think the village is capable really promoting much in the way of economic development or any other development for that matter. And I think that's proven. The town is much better equipped and has a better handle on that. I know you guys have the ability to come up with something out of the box that hasn't already been seen for the last, with the company before you, and the company before them, and the company before them that put up the same slides and the same spiels.
No, understandable. You know, the planning process has a way of kind of repeating itself. For instance, the state recommends you update your comprehensive plan every 5 years. That doesn't tend to happen. As you noted, there are forces beyond the village's control for a lot of things. And I think most people recognize that. So there's limitations, like we're not going to become, you know, Silicon Valley tomorrow. But there are, if I could push back a little bit, there are some ways that plans and then following it up with implementation can help change your community for the better. It's not going to revolutionize, but I think if there's certain goals that you know, might be important to you or to someone else in the room, you can achieve a little bit at a time. And this is a good way to get funding for it too, which is always a carrot at the end of a planning process. So it is limited. It's not going to change the world overnight. I agree with you. But I think that there's progress to be made from efforts like this. Yes.
I think the biggest progress out of the plan is right in the fact that the zoning.
Yeah.
And the code change. That's three of the biggest things.
Right. In our presentation we did back in April, we went through some of the benefits of a comprehensive plan, where those ideas come from. I mentioned the grant funding, but just direction for policy changes doesn't cost a thing. You know, it could just be, oh, well, the community wants to see you know, this neighborhood develop differently, or wants to address this nuisance issue. We can do that right away. We don't have to wait for funding to come in for that. It also helps your planning and zoning boards make sense of what the community wants. That's kind of what their charge is when they look at site plan application projects, is how do we make this something that the community wants? And this gives feedback that allows them to make those decisions. But those are great, both good comments. So that said, go to the next slide, Matt. So our breakout activity. First in the room, we've got 7, actually 8 stations in the back of the room that we want to get your feedback on. Directly starting with the draft vision on the left end of the gallery back there. And then through each of the goal categories. And then a what did we miss category. So if there's something that you want to add that we didn't get to, or didn't want to raise your hand in front of the whole group, that's a perfect spot to tell us what we missed, what we did wrong. You know, what could we do better? You know, if something that you really liked, you could put that on there too. But I want to give that opportunity for folks as well. I want you to mark these up. Nothing is sacred back there. This is the best way for us to get your thoughts, is if you write it down. I'll be moving around, Matt and I will be moving around the boards to start discussion, maybe answer some questions. But if you write it down, that's the most surefire way that we can get some of your ideas considered to be put into the plan. Not every idea that's put on the boards will be put into the plan, but it will be brought up for inclusion amongst discussion of the steering committee. For those online, if you can hear me, and for those of you in the room who know folks who want to contribute but aren't here tonight, we have an online mechanism for you to do this very input. It's through our social pinpoint platform. If you've got a smartphone, you can use the QR code on the screen. But we also have a link to it in the slideshow. So when it gets posted, you'll be able to just click on the link to get to the feedback loop. Again, we'll keep that. We'll keep the online participation open for a few weeks. I think until March. And then we'll collect all the feedback, take it back to the committee and be able to ascertain what changes we want to make. And before we start developing actions and come back to the community later in the spring. So that is our breakout activity. Any questions on the activity? I should also mention, we have sticky notes on there. They're for your use. You don't have to use them. You can write on the board. We got pens and pencils around the room. But please mark them up. That's the best way to do it. Matt, question?
After the breakout activity, are you gonna get back together and live stream again after it's on hold, or is it just gonna be?
This is gonna be it for the live stream.
Okay, so the live stream, everything, the meeting will also be on hometown cable in a couple days, right? You're gonna give a copy.
Yep.
For Chris to get on.
Matt Favreau just mentioned that, to let you all know, the viewing audience, that it'll be on hometown cable, the recording, within a couple days, once we, get the Zoom recording, posted so that it can be, viewed that way as well. That's a good point. Okay. All right, let's break. Feel free to grab some food in the meantime. Now we're gonna move to the back of the room and start going through some of the goals. For those of you online, thank you for joining us. We're going to close the live stream right now. And, please visit our feedback website and let us know what you think. Thanks for joining.